The Shoemaker. Prologue. In one of the small side streets that end in the Bowery, on the east side, is a row of small and dilapidated buildings, which once, in the early days of New York, were the dwellings of fashionable people, but which are now occupied by poor but industrious people. The majority of these houses have some small business carried on in the basement cellars. The people who occupy the houses above the cellar stores or workshops are mostly of the poor but industrious Hebrews who toil early and late to build up a little business in this land of freedom, a business which is really and truly their own, to have and to hold without persecution or robbery. The house where Morris Goldberg had found a shelter and a chance to show of what stuff he was made was, if possible, a little more disreputable in appearance than the others in that row, but to him, who had gone through the horrors of the Kishinev massacre, robbed of his all, save his wife and little daughter, it seemed a peaceful haven of delight. The little destitute family had been assisted to start, in this humble location, by the noble and practical benevolent society of the Hebrews in New York, and, though a cellar whose only light came through grated windows or the open cellar doors, this seemed to him a palace. Was he not free from persecution? His good wife and little daughter and he were free. One must have been a Jew in Russia to know what freedom means. Morris Goldberg was a shoemaker and plied his humble calling with such patient industry, and such thrift, that after a year of struggle he had proudly paid back the money loaned him, and then he moved his wife and daughter to the back room on the floor above, while he pegged and sewed and smoked and sang at his work. The daughter grew into a beautiful womanhood, with all the rich coloring of her race, with snowy teeth, thick waving black hair, and beautiful large dark eyes. She was the loveliest girl in all the neighborhood, with a dainty, graceful figure and a gay, merry soul. Words could not tell how she loved her father, for, after a few years of peace and joy in this land, the mother, who had never recovered from the horrors through which she had passed, died. Her last hours were so sweetly peaceful that the loss to those left behind was more of a chastened sorrow than a poignant grief. Dora was now 16, and matured like the maidens of her race. The father loved Dora with a brooding tenderness almost womanlike in its intensity, and her little hands held his very heart in their grasp. Nothing she did seemed wrong to him, and everything she wanted, that was in his power to give, she had. Above all, he was proud of her education, for that had been his first desire. Dora was kept in school when other girls of her age had worked in factories. She kept house for him in the room above the shop, and she was a good, sweet, obedient daughter. What more could a man ask? A business that kept them from want, and something left over every month. No wonder the honest shoemaker sang as he worked in his little shop as he listened to the steps of his daughter above. Chapter 1. This brief preamble brings the reader to the day and hour when the first movements in this moving human drama began. Morris Goldberg had left his humble store in charge of Dora and a little semi-idiotic boy, whom he had rescued from the streets. The little fellow was thin and white, and dressed in a medley of garments purchased for him from a second-hand store nearby. The child was trying to sew a shoe while seated upon the vacant bench. Dora sat beside him, trying to guide the clumsy fingers, with infinite patience. Now, this way, Loney, both ends at the same time. One this way and one that way. Oh, you will succeed if you keep on. You'll be as good a shoemaker as father some day. I'm trying, Dora, I try so hard, but my hands won't mind me. I'm just no good at all. This the child said with such an expression of utter discouragement that Dora put her plump arm around the little figure, saying, "Oh, yes you are, Loney. You do lots of things, and you are splendid for errand. Anybody can run errands, but I want to be something else than an errand boy. I want to know how to do other things, how to be something in the world, but my head won't let me. It gets all hurty when I try to think what I want to do." Poor little Loney. Tell me how you got hurt, Loney? You have never told me that. Can't you tell me now? Maybe the doctor could cure it if we knew how it happened. Try to remember. The poor, thin little hand went to his head uncertainly, while Loney knitted his brows trying to remember. Then he said dreamily, "Sometimes I can think it out right, and sometimes I can't. I remember I had a mother once pretty, like you but different. She had light hair and such nice blue eyes. She was awful pretty. And I had a father, too, and he was big and handsome. We used to ride in a carriage. Sometimes I can remember the big park, and all the people walking around and in carriages, and then I forget. Then I remember that my father quarreled a lot with my mother and she cried lots, and one day he was going to hit her, and I ran between them and he struck me instead. Then something fell out of my head that they remember with. I guess it was when the blood ran so. Don't you think so? Poor boy, poor little Loney, said Dora, while great tears ran down her rosy cheeks and fell on the bright curls of the little waif. He continued, after a short silence. The next I remember, I was in a place where there were lots of children. I was there a long time. Then I wanted my mother so bad that I ran away. They searched for me and nearly found me, but I hid in a box, and one of the men said, "Let him go. He hasn't any sense, anyway." The little fellow broke down and sobbed pitifully, while Dora said, "Don't cry, Loney. Don't cry. We will take good care of you." And then I sold papers and half-starved. The other boys kicked me around a lot and made fun of me 'cause I couldn't remember. And they named me Loney, and then I came here and your father lets me run errands and that's all. Don't you worry, Loney. You know what my father says, that when business picks up a little he will take you to the good doctor and see if you can't be cured, so you will remember. That's hard for me to think out, Dora. Why hard? What do you mean? I am nothing to your father. He is poor, and it seems so funny, for he is a Jew. Say it, Loney, don't be afraid. A Jew can be a good man, an honest one, a good father, and a good citizen. He loves me, his daughter, and he has a heart, a big one, for all in need. He has pity for them. You are mistaken if you think differently. I have seen him divide his last crust with the hungry, yes, and give them the largest share. Oh, Loney, my father is good. You are right. He has divided with me and, Dora, some day God will bless him for it. At that moment there were steps heard on the rickety cellar steps, and in another moment a young man scarcely more than a boy came to the door. He was a typical Bowery tough, made so by his life in this part of the city, with its most unsavory reputation. He wore a faded corduroy cap, set at an aggressive angle on his frowsy head, and for the rest of his costume he wore a blue flannel shirt, open at the throat, and corduroy pantaloons. His shoes looked as though in urgent need of the services of the shoemaker. His face was dirty, and one of his eyes was blackened and swollen. And, over it all, there showed something so depraved and sinister, such a drawn look of pallor and decay, in spite of his youth. A stranger would not have known how to classify this strange output of city life, but the initiated would have summed it all up in one word: dope. This means the unutterable depravity of opium smoking. In fact, he was generally known in his haunts as Dopey. As he stood on the floor of the shop, Dopey said, in a hoarse voice, "Hello, sis. Where's de main squeeze? Where is what? Why, his gazootzes de matza crusher de man wit, de Bertmach o tree balls on his skull front de boss, if I must say it." "Do you mean my father?" "I guess so. Whereas, he went out to deliver a pair of shoes he has finished and to bring back some to be mended." "Why, soy, go find, I got a job fair, Days a couple of swell guys up de street dat needs his sisterance. De he guy say dat he'll stake me $10. De mall kicked de heel off her Louis XIV, and, wants it nailed on. Dat dollar means de hop joint if I get it, and to de bat house if I don't. Why, soy, dear's nuttin' to it. I'll go and find him," said Loney, in his childish voice. He somewhat understood this Bowery slang better than Dora. "Dat's de trick. Be sure ye does, for if I misses dis I kin see de brassy cop on dis beat pullin' de hook fair de ambulance, and, me to rowin' a fit in de suds tub at de croak joint de horspital. Hully gee, mosey, kid, shake skates." These last words were accompanied by so suggestive a movement that Loney sprang lightly up the steps and disappeared in search of Mr. Goldberg. As the child disappeared, he shouted, "Hop, go, git." Then, turning to Dora, he said, "Dat's de racket. Your old man'll git more coin for dis job dan he ever seen afore." "I'll be glad," replied Dora, half afraid of this strange-looking creature, for business has been very poor lately. There was a darkening of the cellar door, and Dora raised her eyes to see a tall, dark, handsome and well-dressed man assisting a lady down the steps. She was a handsome and very stylishly dressed woman, large and with a most unwomanly expression on her features. In short, it was but too evident that she had been drinking and could scarcely maintain her equilibrium. "Be careful, Muriel, or you'll fall," said the man, whose name was John Pearson. "Why the deuce can't you wear sensible shoes, anyway? You'll break your neck with those high heels yet." As they reached the middle of the room, Muriel laughed idiotically and mumbled something about him and accused him of trying to appear so superior, "just because I kicked my heel off." "So this is the place, eh?" asked Pearson of Dopey, looking about him curiously at the same time. Dopey took on an air of great importance and replied, huskily, "Dis is de gent. It's on de bum, all right, but it's de nearest shoemaker dear is, but—" "Oh, that's all right. Any old port in a storm, you know," stammered Muriel, and, as she saw Dora, she said, "Who you, dear?" "Dora Goldberg, lady. And who is the other girl? Your sister?" "There is no one else here but me," replied Dora, surprised at the question. "That's funny. I must be seeing double. Last bottle gone to my head. Time to quit. All your fault. John Pearson, all your fault. Not mine," muttered the woman, with a maudlin laugh, staggering at the same time so that Dora thought she was falling. She hastened to bring a chair, where the woman tried to seat herself with extreme gravity, while Dora said, "Don't thank me, lady. I'll go and hurry father. Please have the kindness to wait. I won't be long." Dora tripped lightly up the steps and to the street, while Muriel settled herself into the chair and dozed almost at once. In the meantime Pearson silently watched Dora disappear, and then, turning to Dopey, said, in a low voice, "You are right. She is both young and beautiful. Yes, cull, and poor Jez as poor as a choich mouse. Show her some shines de mince, I mean. Tell her about de glad rags, de nags and de chariot and, soy, dear's nuttin' to it." "Hush, not so loud," replied Pearson, looking toward Muriel, which caused him to speak in a much lower tone as he gave his very unfavorable opinion of the intoxicated woman, comparing her to a bunch of wildcats. Suddenly Muriel roused and began to sing in a drowsy voice the words of a drinking song. Pearson rudely ordered her to shut up, which had no other effect than to make the woman repeat her song in a louder voice. "Oh, I say, for heaven's sake, keep still. Of all the disgusting things on earth, a drunken woman is the worst," said Pearson angrily, while he stamped his foot in rage. "Ah," said she, acridly, "and how about a drunken man? Is there such a wide difference? I never took a drink in my life and you know it, Muriel Hamilton." "Well, I don't count you a man. You are a beast, you are." "Thanks, awfully," replied he, bowing scornfully. Muriel tried to rise and bow, but fell back in the chair with a silly laugh. "Oh, you are welcome. Gee, I nearly fell off my perch. Steady, Bertie, steady." Pearson strode back and forth in the little place, finally stopping before the woman, saying, "You may as well understand this, now, Muriel. I am sick and tired of the way you are going on. I know I've done some things that would not stand the light of day exactly, but I never drank. I've committed some crimes, but drunkenness has never been one of them, and I hate liquor. I tell you this, right now you've got to sober up and stop drinking or I'll quit you cold." At this open threat, Muriel sat up straight and looked at the man half defiant, half scared. He maintained his coldly resolute look, while she scanned his face, and then half laughed. "By heaven, I believe you mean it. Just you try it on, Jack Pearson. Just you try it on, that's all. I'll take a stroll. I needs de fresh air. It's de sidewalk fair mine," said Dopey, uneasily. He had seen too many drunken fights to wish to see another, especially with a powerful woman like Muriel. But Jack went to him and muttered, "You stay here. I'll have it out with her here and now. I want to make room for the other one." "Ah," said Muriel, as she rose almost steadily and advanced. "Any secrets that I cannot know?" "No, there is not. I was just telling him that I am sick of your constant sprees and temper. That's all, and I mean it." "Ah," said Muriel, advancing and with a dangerous light in her eyes, "and, I suppose, You meant it when you deserted your honest wife for me, and when you struck your child, and killed him, for all you know. Yes, you must have meant both those things, as you never took a drink in your life. You had not even the excuse of drunkenness. Mine was a new face then, and now that the liquor that you gave me to gain your ends has got the best of me, you'll quit me cold, will you? Then, let me tell you, when you do it will be cold for you will be dead. Scuse me, cull, I hear me mutter callin' me, and I has to go, said Dopey. Go to the devil, if you want to, replied Pearson angrily. Dat's jes where I don't want to go. Her jigs is up to de boilin' point, and all dem sharp shoe knives lyin' dear. See me eye, she put dis on it last night. One's enough fair me. Now, Dopey, I'm sorry I hit you, honest I am. Say, Jack, you don't know what sent me on this spree, do you? Said Muriel. I don't know and I don't care, replied Jack coldly. There is no excuse for it. Yes, there is. I saw your forsaken, heartbroken wife slinking along in the street a ragged, gin-soaked wreck, and I couldn't help remembering what she was when we robbed her, you and me. She was honest and true, and, as I looked at her, the sight sickened me, body and soul. I drank to forget it. Why do you mention her to me? I have never seen her since, and never want to. Nor the boy, either? Poor little half-witted fellow. Give me credit for one thing, I wanted to keep him and care for him. But, no, you robbed his mother of him and put him in the asylum. These things haunt me, Jack. Even drink will not blot them out. Rot, that's nothing but the drink. My ex-wife should have stayed in the West. She was so pretty and pure and honest that she actually led me to marry her. I hated her for that from the first. Yours is coming to you, Jack, and you'll get it good and plenty if ever her brother sets eyes on you. Those cowboys know how to shoot, laughed Muriel meaningly. Don't try to frighten me. William Hunter, or Cactus Bill Hunter, as they called him, is dead. I had a letter telling me that he has disappeared, so I'm not afraid. Maybe and maybe not, but, if ever you two do meet, you'd better get your gunplay in first. So, then, she continued, in a softer tone, do you want to quit your old pal? And just after my being up all night on the Bowery, helping you fleece this, come on. Not much gratitude. Ah, forget it, said Pearson roughly, changing his tone and manner suddenly, as he saw Dora returning with Loney. The young girl hastened down the steps, flushed and rosy with her hurried search. My father is coming. I hope we did not keep you waiting too long. Muriel had sat down again in the chair, and her head had fallen forward drowsily, while John, with a side look at Muriel, said to Dora, No, my little dear, I am repaid for the long wait by seeing you again. Don't you ever get tired of this musty old cellar? Wouldn't you like to live in a fine house, with servants to wait upon you, and have beautiful diamonds and clothes to wear? Oh no, sir, I would not leave Papa and Benny for all the fine houses and jewels in the world. And, besides, we don't live in the cellar. We only work here. We live upstairs. While this little conversation was taking place, Muriel had roused again, but this time her eyes were fastened upon little Loney, who had begun to wax some threads for the shoemaker. This was a task that he delighted in doing. He had been told that it was a great help to the kind old man. Muriel, after staring at the child, asked what his name was. The little fellow looked at her in a vague manner as he said, Loney, lady, just Loney, that's all the name I know. As the pretty, though vague, eyes were raised to hers, Muriel gave a start, saying to herself, Those eyes, that look in them, it is he without a doubt. The hardened woman gave a deep sob which, with Dora's calm refusal of all he offered her, made John angry, and he said, roughly shaking her at the same time, What's the matter with you, you idiot? Nothing, replied she, only my sins are finding me out. That is all. Further conversation was checked by the arrival of Morris Goldberg, who came quietly down the cellar steps to his shop. The old man wore his leather apron, and had his sleeves rolled to his elbows, thus showing a pair of brawny arms and toil-roughened hands. In one of them he carried a pair of old shoes to be mended. With unconscious dignity the old man advanced toward his customers, and when Dora asked, impetuously, what had kept him so long, he told her quietly that there was more bad news from Russia, from Odessa this time, where the unfortunate Jews were being butchered and driven like noxious beasts before the terrible Cossacks. And I must stop to say sometings to Courage Jake Rosenblum. His old Fader and motor are in Odessa. Then, turning to Jack Pearson, he said, "Good morning, sir. Can I do sometings for you?" "Are you the shoemaker?" asked John. "Am I a shoemaker? Am I a shoemaker? Well, I shouldst say I was a shoemaker. And I can make a pair of shoes while you weigh, if you weigh long enough." "Say, who are you?" "It's none of your business. This lady here has knocked the heel of her shoe off, and she wants you to put it on. That's enough for you to know, so get busy." All right, said the old man, taking his seat on the bench and preparing for his work. Dopey took a stool and sat down facing the old man, putting his own foot, encased in a very dilapidated shoe, almost in the old man's face, at the same time leering at the old man very unpleasantly, who said, Oi, vad a face. You looks like a bulldog. Vat you vant. A patch for de plaque eye, eh? Never mind me mug, said Dopey, insolently, nor me lamp. What'll it cost me to get me skates fixed? Days in a bad way. Well, you bring me a pair of soles, and I'll put some uppers on dem. Muriel, said John, stay here as long as you like. I am going out to get a bite to eat, and, when you are through, come up to Lyon's restaurant or go home. I don't care which. All right, darling, I suppose I shall be able to survive your absence. Come on, Dopey. I suppose you want your $1, said Pearson, who had his idea in wishing to get Dopey outside. I'm ready. I's dead hungry for a bullet, said Dopey, a gleam of anticipation in his glassy eyes. Morris Goldberg said to himself, he must be one of dem suiciders. That for kind of talk is dot about a bullet? John and Dopey left the place, and as soon as they were outside, John said to Dopey, nodding his head toward Dora, she is all you said, and more. Help me to land her, and you'll never know what it means to go hungry for opium again. They then walked along out of sight of the humble shoemaker's shop,